sorry. I just wanted to know if you were able to do any more of the programs for the customers after the one in Kansas City.
So we are working on a second one, and that's a great question, but my time is so consumed with my internal markets, and I need to serve them first. Looking at one in New York, though. We're looking what to do on, and I'm hoping it will grow. It's just we realize we need so much more here locally, and so internal is my first thing to do. But of course, if it helps my team members and helps the sales teams build a relationship with their customers, then I will do that for them as well.
You spoke in your culture. My question is that were you born in the United States or were you born in India?
So I am born in United States, and my husband came when he was 9 years old.
So as far as your culture and how you express it so well and helping others to understand, was it in your family? Your family was, you were raised in American culture, or was it your culture that helped? How did you make that cross?
Great question. And it is I am known as an ABCD. It's a term we use in our Indian world, which is an American-born confused Desi. Desi means Indian. And I think, it's just a thing. It was a little challenge growing up here because I wanted to be Americanized and cool like my American friends, but my parents were holding me back to be Indian. And maybe some of you who've immigrated before you understand that. My big fat Greek wedding, that girl who wanted her Wonder Bread and wanted to be, that was the challenges we had. Can't date. Why do you need to date? You're going to have an arranged marriage. These are the things I had to fight for. And then anybody younger than me kind of got that, I broke the path for them. So my parents worked hard to preserve the Indian culture. I'm trying to make a balance here, and that became a big challenge. But we managed. And they sent us we went to India every 2 years to meet our grandparents. So it was always every 2 years, for the summertime. That was our vacation. So we were traveling at birth, right? So our exposure has been there. My children know the slums of India. They've seen the riches, they've seen the slums, they've seen the world. We went on a recent trip in December. We were in a small village and there's no Wi-Fi. Yay, I like that. That is vacation for me, no Wi-Fi. And they're like, oh my gosh. I said, yeah. Sorry, you're going to have to live here. This is how it works. So the minute they landed on U.S. territory, cellular data on, I said, it's good for you to appreciate the world. But no, it's a good question. And it's very typical, I think, of any generation coming is always bridging the gap and finding how the generational and cultural differences can be brought together. Great question. Yeah?
I'd like to hear a little bit about your resources and how you gather your information to share for the specific cultures.
Absolutely. Great question. So when it's a country I'm not maybe as familiar with, I'm very fortunate that being in a global organization, I have colleagues all around the world. I start with a great book called Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands, if you've heard of that book, and Culture Wizard. So we'll put a basic deck together. Then we will run it through our country, the JW in Shanghai or some of my colleagues there, and say, can you please validate this from a cultural lens and from a hospitality? Then I will also talk to friends of the culture and just ask their opinion. Hey, what would you like me to do if you came to Marriott and you're a Jewish guest and it's Rosh Hashanah? What would wow you if you walked into my hotel? Oh, if you put apples and honey, that would be great. That would sweeten the new year. Simple. Doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's being mindful and sensitive and understanding that. So talking to friends, talking to colleagues helped validate everything, and then talking to hotels that did really good job in this space. My favorite story is a Courtyard in Paris, Saint Denis. They did a phenomenal job with the Chinese travelers. So when I learned from other hotels what they do, every single product in their hotel was converted into Chinese. Every map of the city was in Chinese. Every single thing. And a lot of pictures. We know pictures are also a universal language. Pictures speak 1,000 words. So working with different hotels and different people, I was able to, and I'm always improving my decks. Success is never final, right? You're always working to improve. So if somebody has another great story to share, I might look at that and add that in there. So after 4 or 5 years, my knowledge has built up and I'm very comfortable now presenting. When I do present, if there is an associate at the hotel that is from Middle East or I engage them to come in for color commentary and add their stories as well. So, does that help? Okay, great.
Seema, I had a quick question.
Sure.
we get it in this room. I think a lot of us understand the cultural competency piece and how that plays. But let's just say you were on an elevator with someone who is, let's say they're a medium-sized business in the hospitality business here in Georgia, and they don't quite understand. I wondered if you could share just what you would say to them, because I spend a lot of time trying to make that argument with people that don't necessarily understand that world. So what would be your main arguments for that?
So I'm in an elevator with the person that I don't know.
Right. Well, let's say they've asked you, "Hey, I've heard some things going on there with cultural about Marriott. Why is that important? Why are you guys doing that?"
Yeah, they're skeptical, right?
Yeah.
And some things I've had from people is, well, why do we need to adjust to them? Why can't they adjust to us, right? We hear that a lot too. And I always want, yes, absolutely. And so I tell them, this is what I simply tell them. Listen, we're in a competitive world, right? If they're not going to pick Marriott, they're going to pick Hyatt, they're going to pick Hilton, something else. My job is to make sure you're prepared to give them a wow experience so they want to pick Marriott as a hotel. If you don't do it, that's fine, but then someone else is going to do it. And I don't want it to be someone else. I want it to be that they come to us as a preference. Just like San Paulo Renaissance said, it's now a preference hotel. So you cannot do it if that's your choice, but somebody else will. So, yeah.
So you see how important all these cross-cultural competency skills are. What would you say to a high school or to a college student to try to share with them how important it is to have these skills?
That's a great question. I just told Bill 6-7 months ago we sit in the North Shore of Chicago, and our public high school is one of the top 5 in the country. I think they claim number 1, but I'll just be nice and say top 5. It's Stevenson High School. My husband's on the school board, and I sit on the Equality, Race, Diversity Committee, and I'm actually presenting to parents. Because what's happening is our school mix has changed. And we live in a high Jewish community, but there's a lot more Asians coming in. It used to be 10% 7 years ago when my daughter was there. Now we're at 30 going to 40%. Because it's such a well-known school, Asians generally are very academic centric, and they are focused very much on education. And so everybody wants to get into that school district where everybody's getting 36 ACTs and, all the stats start coming out. So my thing is, with kids, I feel strongly that the kids today are a little bit more ahead than us because it is immersed in their classroom setting a little bit better. You now have LGBT clubs, right? I didn't have that growing up in my time. Things are a lot more open. We have World's Fair, we have diversity clubs. I think it depends where you live in the country as well. New York, you'll have a lot more opportunity, and LA, but maybe not in Kansas City as much. So depending where you live. But my advice to kids is, I know maybe travel is not in everybody's budget, not everybody's blessed to do that, but there's books you can read. There's movies you can watch to learn about another culture. So exposing them and getting them to go into, I love classes like world religion, and I teach Jainism on that class, or global studies, or global relations. If our kids can start taking some of these classes, it will open up their mind. Some things we can't do. I mean, if the household is, apples don't fall far from trees sometimes. So you have to work with the parents, you need to work with the teachers, you need to work with the students. All 3 need to be on the same page in order for our children to be that next success. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes.
So I guess this kind of goes along with your question too. You were talking about in Saint-Denis in Paris that you really cater to the Chinese customers. How do you find that balance though of not making your hotel basically a Chinese hotel and still catering to those who are still, maybe even Parisians are still, coming to your hotel or, that way? How do you balance that?
That's a great question. So what we do is we know that there's travel and tour groups that are coming. So we keep the material ready for them, but by all means, all guests are equal. So there will be, materials in French. There'll be materials in other languages as well. But because we've seen a higher everybody talks in an immigrant community, right? If you have a great experience, you go back to your homeland, you tell everybody, and it's great. So we've seen that this tour group has enjoyed coming to this hotel, but the other guests get the same equal treatment. It's just different languages or anything like that. It's not that the whole hotel is this way. You will find noodles in their gift shop area. They will do small things like that, but it's not that it's taken over in any way. in any way. But if there was a large Portuguese group coming in or a large Japanese, we will cater to them as well. Absolutely. Everybody in our world, we welcome all equally and respectfully, and that is the mission of Marriott, that everybody is inclusive. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Yes, Trish Edwin.
So one of the things you mentioned, students that may not have the budgets that allow them to study abroad and things like that. And I imagine you have associates that this workshop that they're attending through you is probably the first experience they've had with multiculturalism. Mm-hmm. I'm going to kind of piggyback on Farah's question and go, for your associates or for college students, how would you recommend that they expand their multicultural knowledge, that they prepare themselves, and particularly in terms of classes that they might take while they're still at college, or resources they might use?
Great question. If I had to redo college again, I would put anthropology as a subject. I would have, and I think I will still take it as a, just because I'm interested in this with my field. I think it depends a lot on how they were raised, right? It's your beginning, your mindset, your programming that you were done. If your family was very well into, let's learn about other cultures, let's eat at a Chinese restaurant today, let's try Thai food, you're gonna have a different view in life. Some of us are blessed to travel, some may not, but there's lots of ways. For college kids, I tell them, be open-minded, do internships where you can that are going to give you some global exposure. My son next year will study abroad in Hong Kong. I said, great, I want to go visit. This is an opportunity for him. I said, let's pick places where mom hasn't gone yet, right? That's how we figure out where study abroad should be. My older daughter did Santiago. So we went to Argentina, Chile, we enjoyed that too. It comes from it depends on how they were raised. Some people are not comfortable leaving their homeland. Some people are just comfortable with a certain group of people. I think exposing them when you have like a World's Fair type of thing. So Stevenson High School does a big diversity day where all the countries come and have a booth, and they'll have dances and food. So we expose kids to different things. So as a university, if you have that, that's great. Give them opportunities to learn. You can provide those opportunities that they may not have had, but encourage them to come. Maybe you get extra credit for coming. I don't know, whatever works. But we can also do that ourselves. With our associates, so next week, in 2 weeks, it's our Associate Appreciation Week, and we do things where we have a day of just recognizing everybody's from a different culture. They can wear their clothing, they can bring in their food and share. So we want them to be comfortable. Many of my hotels have 40 different nationalities in the hotels already. So they learn so much just from other associates. But what the class that I do helps them is make them understand, oh, now I get it. Now I understand what saving face means, or I understand why a Japanese person may not show emotion and they always have a nice smile. Understanding that makes them work better with those associates as well. But there's a lot of opportunities that colleges would do, and I would say check out other colleges. What are they doing in this space? Make sure that you're the leader and that you're doing it well. And they might have some great best practices that you can learn from. My job is to be the hub. People come to me and I connect them with other hotels that have done a great job. Seema, we have South Korean guests. Who do I go to? What can I learn from an operational standpoint? Can I serve kimchi? Can I do this? And then I have another hotel who's done it very well, and I'll connect them. Don't be afraid to look at your competition. Don't be afraid to see what are other people doing. Their competitive landscape. That's what it's about. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts? Yeah.
I'm just curious to know, like with your diversity day or your cultural days, has there been any impact with the majority cultures in the different hotels where you feel like you don't really have a culture to show up with, or a particular unique dress to show up in on your diversity day or your cultural day?
You mean when I'm going to the hotels?
No, when you're hosting these different events at the different hotels or at the different properties, the majority culture, you almost you almost, it's easy to feel that you don't have anything unique to necessarily showcase. Has there ever been any discussion around the impact that this might have on other culture?
No, the cultures that I've designed, the 12, have come to me from the market. So they're asking for it. I'm not creating something until they ask for it. The 5 the main ones that I actually have a whole, like you saw in the video, those are all mine. And I take them with me. So since I can't take them to India for a field trip, I need to bring India to them. So I do it through the music. I have a wardrobe of different countries' clothes, and I have the speakers who come in, the co-presenters of mine, who get so excited. Who doesn't get excited talking about their own culture, right? It's something you love when you want to connect with somebody and you start telling them, hey, you're from Ghana? We just connected today. My daughter went to Ghana for her business trip and she's from Ghana, and I'm like showing her pictures, and wow, you put 2 people together and it's great, right? So I've never had a challenge in that because I make the class to help them feel immersed. I bring foods. The chef will make foods of that culture. So we think 5 senses all the time to bring them together. Yeah.
Just want to add to what was just said. I work for the Department of Justice Bureau of Prisons, and every year we do a Cultural Diversity Day in August. And one year I did a cultural marketplace, and I turned the entire training building into a marketplace. And and this was so grateful because the majority, they were able to feel included, because normally when you have special days, affinity days, certain groups are left out of it. But this particular day we had food, and I had folks that bring clothing, and they would hang it up, and everybody for one day, we just hung around, and it was so refreshing to see everyone come together, and they want to learn. People want to know about other culture.
Right.
They just don't know how to connect. So it's important that we use days like you mentioned, the Cultural Day. That is a great way to really bring all your groups together, all your different EGR groups together, and get them to really come as a unit.
Yes, absolutely, and thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. The one thing also, they think, like we said, food is a universal language, right? That's something everybody likes. It brings everybody together. It's the one language we all speak. And pictures speak 1,000 words. When we show a picture, I tell people we have a courtyard, if you've heard of Marriott Courtyard, and they have a bistro. Well, it's great, but I'm a Japanese guest and I see this word hummus. I have no idea what a hummus is. Do you know what a hummus is if you're from? No, it's not common, right? It may not be common, but if I see a picture of like a sauce dip with some celery and carrots and some pita bread, oh, that looks appetizing. So food is a very integral part when we talk about cultures. It brings people together. It does. Yes.
So, Seema, I have a question. It's not fully formed, but
oh, that's okay.
I'm working through it. So I'm thinking from the point of view of higher ed. Because our field, like a language department field, and I have a couple of colleagues here, I mean, they can attest to this, that our field has shifted dramatically in the last 20 years.
Absolutely.
Traditionally, we used to be a lit department. We were paired alongside English, and it was just literature. My PhD is in Spanish literature. But now, more and more so, we're cultural studies. We study cultural production, and we kind of frame that within politics and economics. So, I mean, with these kinds of things, we have a lot to offer, but I don't think we're good at marketing what we do and how we can interface with the interests of business. And a lot of times, especially within the humanities, they're loath to do so because they feel it diminishes the purity of our discipline. I'm not one of those, clearly, but and John, who had to step out, we're working on developing modules that would offer, say, Chinese culture and language for business. That would be something that would be outwardly facing to the business community, to nonprofits, government agencies, etc. Like what kinds of things could we do on our end to better communicate what we have to offer to the community, to business, etc.
So do you have, like how high schools have their fair of different classes, or a night where people can come and see? Do they have something like that at a college level?
No.
Okay, so we don't have that, but that could be something that if you have an opportunity. When I look back at when we had our gen eds, the requirements we have the first 2 years, maybe those requirements need to shift. I mean, I love art history, I enjoy it, but maybe there's things that can be shifting to what globally our kids need to survive in today's world. They're not competing with the kid next door. They're competing with somebody in a different country now. Our jobs are being taken with different people around the world. So maybe just understanding the curriculum and understanding what are those required gen eds, maybe that needs to shift. And I'm just speaking out loud. I'm just thinking, I have children in college. I've seen what they've taken. I see what they're doing. And I'm thinking, wow, that's a great class, but this is where it's really relevant for what you're going to do in the real world. So that's just something to talk about as a university level. But to expose what you do, I'm wondering if there's a fair, like you have the, the back to, or like how you have back to school in high school, but if there's some opportunity where kids may not even know this exists, right? This is so new. What I love about my job is that multicultural or cultural competency is not something you learn just at Marriott. This is not a system application that when I leave the company, I won't need to know. This is something that's practical life. My kid's teacher is Japanese, my neighbor is German, my next door neighbor is Chinese. I'm learning to be a better human and making sure that the world is going to be a better place for all of us if I have this understanding. So it's something that I would just propose to say, how do you get it? Either you can mark it, you have the kids as a freshman have a book of 1,000 classes to take. How do you get your classes and understanding? And maybe it's a night where come and, you have foods of different countries, or you just have some opportunity for them to be exposed to that. Nowadays, think about it. There was never a thing called internet law. That came in the last 15, 20 years. My daughter's looking at computer science, business, and media technology as an intersection. She found one school, it happened to be Miami, that was offering it, my school. But the point is, people are not even aware what's out there because they've always been thinking, okay, it's the basics. So maybe that awareness, getting them early as they're applying and enrolling, of saying this is another opportunity that you can have. But what would be a bigger presence is if it can be a requirement rather than a elective, if that's even possible.
A quick question. How do you avoid cultural stereotypes that might be outdated, in the sense since culture is always in flux and changing? It's also generational.
Absolutely.
So what somebody thinks older might be different than the younger generation?
Absolutely correct. That is a great point. I mean, cultures are fluid, right? Generations are changing over time. Generations are changing. The stereotypes, things are changing. No doubt everybody has stereotypes on something, and that's not always bad, People might say, oh, all the Asians are very smart and all this people are, there's just, I grew up saying you're always messing up the curve, right? I was one Indian throwing off the curve. So we all had these things that we had to go through. But I think it's just being smart and understanding, and this is where people have to do their reading, and you're going to have people who will always sit in one bucket, and you can't change them. No matter what, I cannot touch 600,000 associates the way I'd like to, but it's just they have to be understanding themselves and doing a little reading and making sure that they're okay. We provide as much tools and resources as we can, but they have to be accepting of it as well. Okay. Yes? Wow, I really like this class. You guys are great. This is the most questions I've ever had.
Thank you. I just also had a quick question about intersectionality, because I know in your slideshow you had both people of color, Asians, but you also had LGBTQ plus communities. So how do you deal with LGBTQ plus Asian or African or the intersection of those communities?
That's a great question. Some of our marketing material actually has it'll be LGBT, but it'll be geared toward the Hispanic Latino community if we're working with that conference. So our marketing teams will provide some of that for us and we try to tailor the marketing depending on the conferences we're going to and what we are looking for in that conference. But it's like your majors. We're always having interdisciplinary, right? We're combining majors. It's no different in working with different segments. There can be an Asian person with the LGBT community who is from Brazil, right? And understanding everything together. My job is to just, help provide the tools and resources and then sit with them, and sometimes I do consulting if they have some ideas and say let's look at different things and pull it all together. We're not a cookie cutter business. We have to customize and understand each guest as they come in, and we do the best we can. Like I said, there's a lot of information, so my job is to just make them feel comfortable and confident when they work with guests of whatever backgrounds they are.
I found it interesting that you actually had some real measurements to say, how how many, the impact that it had on your LGBTQ or the Asian population.
So those were from statistics that we got online from different, those are not ours, we got those from government. Or things, those ones, yeah.
Okay.
Anything that was my case studies, those are things we did at the hotel level.
Okay, so does the hotel ask, for customers or guests to self-disclose?
Nope. So we do not have that. We just can know sometimes based on last names where people are from. We can have some sort of ideas from that.
Sure.
Our guest satisfaction surveys don't have that information on there.
Right.
So, but we know when we have a high Indian group coming in and they're all coming from Bangalore.
Right.
Yes, we know that they're Indian, and we can see things like that. We can't.
Sure.
You can't assume all the time.
Right.
But certain times we find, the Chinese Shanghai company is bringing in a tour group in. Yes, I can assume these guests are from. And depending on how they like to pay, we can see by the payment methods also where they're coming from.
Because it's a great way to demonstrate, like you said, the business case for cultural competencies, especially for groups who might not already be on board with the idea.
Right.
It's certainly a great.
And I bet you there's not one person in this room that doesn't work for an organization or a company that can't think, can probably use something multicultural in their own space.
Right.
Look at the post office. Post office has stamps that are now Diwali, Chinese New Year. I saw some Mexicans. They're starting to be. There's not a single company out there that is not taking this and knowing that they need to work in this.
Sure.
Because every customer, look at the world, look at our country, it's changed. The profile of, you see the typical 28-year-old male of the world, but even USA is changing. It's changing. Who is coming into this country and who we are is a different group. So smart Costco. My Costco, I can get Indian products, I can get Mexican products. They're really getting smart on how they're learning to work with the local and see what that community is and put the foods out there accordingly.
Excellent.
So, yes?
When you make available the Rosetta program,
Oh, I'm sorry.
when you make available the Rosetta program, you make it only for the managers, or you started with, it was a volunteer, or how you work with the, encourage another language in the staff?
I'm sorry, repeat that again. How do I
Encourage a second language in the company.
in the
general.
company? So the beauty is in a global company like ours, being in 120 countries, there's not one hotel out there that has only one language. Every hotel has several. When they see the front desk people are seeing a large group coming in from a certain segment, they themselves will go online. They're ready to go. They want to do a good job. And we have set up, our founder, J.W. Marriott, has always taught us, Yes, from Utah. That's right. That's right. The most humble billionaire I have ever met, and he still checks our hotels under the beds and making sure everything is clean. He's an amazing human being. He taught us that if we take care of the associate will take care of the guest. And that is how our motto is in our company. But as far as encouraging them, they come to these classes. Our general managers will encourage them. They'll pay for their training. So if we invest in them, they're going to do a good job. So for Rosetta Stone, we get a very minimal fee because we're such a large company, and they are welcome to. All of our hotels that have that access, they're welcome to, and a lot of them will do it together. Or I think when you're just in a very diverse group, you get automatically interested in learning about other cultures. So front desk does a lot of impact, housekeeping, as they sometimes are working with them too, general managers. But basically anybody that's guest facing will want to learn. I think we just encourage it as a company that training is important, learning is important, and this is how we set ourselves up for success.
Just a point of curiosity, I was wondering if in any of your international properties you've ever had to do an American or North American.
So that's a
culture
great
day.
question. So just last year, a year ago, you will not believe who asked me to put a USA deck together. It was San Francisco. Because 50% of the workforce was non-American, and they wanted to learn how to take care of the USA guest. I'm also presenting in Panama City, Panama in a couple of weeks, and they took my USA deck and they're like, yes, we need you to teach our people in Latin America how to take care of a USA guest. They don't need to know how to take care of the Brazilian guest. They know all that. They want to learn how to take care of the USA guest. But that's a great question. It's a great question. So I only had to do it like once, but now I'm going to do it again there. So that will be fun. Good question. Yes?
I actually have a question. As an international student from Jordan, what advice do you have for people who live between cultures? So I'm used to living here, but I also have culture back in Jordan.
Sure.
So what advice do you have for students or for people who live between cultures?
That's a great question. I have a lot of nieces in your position. They've come from India, and I'm getting a lot more every day that come here. Be proud of your culture. Always be proud of who you are. Don't forget where your roots are, but you can assimilate into the good things of the American culture too. Take the best of both. Take the best of both. I had a discussion with my 17-year-old the other day, and she knows a lot about cultures just because it's a lot of family discussion at dinner time, and my kids are pretty culturally competent because I give them trivia all the time and things they have to do. But I said, let's play a game. Let's take something from each culture and find the best and incorporate it in our life. So, from the Chinese culture, we like saving face. Are you familiar with saving face? So this is something we do. And from this culture, we took this, and from this culture, and we did. And the reason it came up is she was asked in her world religion class when they were studying Judaism that they can either do kosher for 3 days or practice Shabbat. And we decided as a family to practice Shabbat of no electricity from Friday sundown to Saturday. That was the best day of my life. Wow. My no technology days are the best days ever. So be proud of who you are. People, be proud, and when people want to ask, showcase the best of Jordan. My colleague is there. Her name is Diva. And I've been to Dubai. I have not been there yet, but on my next trip. And I think every person who comes here from another culture, be proud. And yet, appreciate the good things of this country. When people come here in this country, oh my God, you do this, well, then why'd you come? I mean, you have to appreciate the culture that you're in and be proud of both and find the best of the best to make yourself a great person. Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great question to end on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I also want to give a special thanks to our student assistants who guided you here, who helped you check in, who have been running around with microphones. Please give them a round of applause. So Steve is or was just here. We're going to go he's balancing on the rail upstairs, so we're going to go do a group shot. And then anybody who would like individual photos in front of the culture drop-down banner will be out there and I'm sure Seema is happy to take more questions out in the foyer. But let's all head out and get organized for the group shot.